How many of you ever been driving somewhere? I know there's some of you who are just weird and your gas tank is always full, right? You're going to tell me, hey, it costs just as much to fill up the second half as it did the first half. I don't care, right? For me, I like to live on the edge, which means if that light goes on because there's an eighth of a tank left in the gas tank, that means I've got an eighth of a tank to keep on driving. What that also means is that I know that at a certain point when the digital things, when it says 30 miles to go, at some point it just stops telling you. It's like, I'm still running, but you don't know how far you're going to get. Anybody else like that? I'm the only one. Todd and I, the guys on staff, right? Great. We're really going somewhere. Anyway, right? But you get this, there's like this adrenaline rush when you get all the way there. Here's the problem, is that my wife is kind of the same way, right? We will do everything else except go to the gas station. And one year, when Gabe was in kindergarten, we were sharing a vehicle. And part of my duty as father that year was to be I was the carpool driver for 3 kindergartners who had afternoon kindergarten. And so I would go and pick them up and take them to school and drop them off, and whatever they did after that was up to them. But I was carpool guy. Gabe hung out with me all morning. We had a great time. I don't know what he did all that time. He ran all around the church, probably swam in the baptistry and did those things that preacher kids do. But we had a great time. Until that morning, when we pulled out of the driveway, started driving to pick up his friends, and the car started shaking. And then just stopped. And so I did what any good preacher would do. I started praying. I was like, God, I work for you. So if you just start this car back up, I promise that I'll never go and let the van get this low on gas again. I also blame my wife for not getting gas, but I'm learning that that's probably not a good thing to do. So I won't tell you that. Right? And so I said, I promise, I'll never again will the gas get this low. Never again will we have this problem. If you could just do a miracle right now and fill up, just get me to the school, just so these kids. I hadn't even picked up the rest of the carpool yet. I was now the bad dad who was not going to make it. And I didn't know their phone numbers. I'm sure Stephanie had given them to me at one time, and I was like, I don't care. I'm always going to be there. I'll always show up. I'll get their phone number when I need it, next time, when I'm out of gas. And so, God does what God does, and I guess it was teaching me a lesson, because the car didn't start back up. No matter how much I tried, no matter how much I prayed, no matter how much I put my hands on it and tried to get it to be healed, it didn't work. I did everything I could. Finally, I told Gabe, hey, we're going to have to go home. So I called Stephanie and frantic uproar and said, you have to figure out how to get a hold of those kids. I'm not going to make it. Gabe's not going to get to school anymore. They're probably going to have the cops come talk to get me because I didn't take kids to school. Right? All of these things were going through my head. And it went from a nice drive to school to this terror. I ran out of gas. And it was devastating to me. Not because of the fact that I was out of gas, but because now I had to walk home. Right? And so I started to walk. Here's the crazy thing is that as I'm walking, one of my neighbors drives by me. And he sees Gabe and I walking in the van not too far away. So he does what any good neighbor would do. And he pulls over and he says, hey, can I give you a ride? And I did what any good stubborn person would do. I told him no. No problem. I'm just going to walk home, get a gas can, and come back. And so he drove off, and I walked home, grabbed my gas can, took it to the gas station that I had passed going there. Now I'm passing coming back. And I had a 6-gallon gas can. Now, the logical thing to do would probably be to fill 6 gallons into that gas can, wouldn't it be? Right? You get that far? Not me. $2 worth. I don't even know how much that gave me. It might not have even given me a gallon. I got 2 gallons worth because I did not want to carry that heavy gas can all the way back. I barely got home. Barely got anywhere. Barely got back to the gas station. And today, I still live on that edge, but I am still scared to death that I'm going to run out of gas sometime. And so now, when that thing stops telling me how far to go, that's when I get gas. I'm glad I'm not the only one who's ever run out of something, though.
Because I've talked to people who said, I've run out of money, right? We have more serious things. Or I've run out of the days of my life. My health is declining. I've run out of friends. I've run out of love for my wife. I've run out of opportunities to go to work. I've run out of the will to say no to an addiction. I've run out of good feelings. Just run out. And I think it's at those times when we run out, when we expect a change the least, but change can happen the most. And over the next few weeks, we're going to talk about these miracles where there's just these transformations in people's lives. And I think as we look at them, number one, we begin to see that God is willing to be involved in our lives in an everyday way. But number two, in order for us to see them, sometimes we have to change ourselves as well. And maybe it's not so much of us a changing, but an obedience and a stepping forth, an opening of our eyes, and an opportunity to think that maybe the way that I'm living is not susceptible to God changing me. And so today I'm going to look at a miracle that Jesus performs at a very everyday place. It's a place that you and I have found ourselves in probably. A place that you and I may find ourselves in again. A wedding. Everybody loves weddings. It's a good party. It's a good time. And usually we walk out of there with everybody happy with each other. The second chapter of John, we read about a wedding. And many of us are familiar with this scripture passage. But today I want us to see, what does it mean for God to transform our lives? And how is it possible for us to begin to see that? John chapter 2, starting with the first verse, says, on the third day there was a wedding in Cana in Galilee, and the mother of Jesus was there. Jesus also was invited to the wedding with his disciples. When the wine ran out, the mother of Jesus said to him, they have no wine. They have no wine. And Jesus said to her, woman, what does this... Every time I read that, I kind of get the hairs in the back of my neck stand up just because of his response to her, right? How many of you are going to go home when your mom says something to you and look at her and go, woman? There's a miracle that happens here that Jesus didn't get slapped right then, right? My mom would have pulled off her sandal and hit me right across the head. And if she wasn't close enough to hit, she'd throw it. And my mom could not get the broadside of the barn unless she was throwing a shoe at me. Then it was every bullseye every time. Woman, what does this have to do with me? My hour has not yet come. His mother said to the servants, do whatever he tells you. Now there were 6 stone water jars there for the Jewish rites of purification, each holding 20 or 30 gallons. Jesus said to the servants, fill the jars with water. And they filled them to the brim. And he said to them, now draw some out, take it to the master of the feast. So they took it. When the master of the feast tasted the water, now became wine, and did not know where the wine came from, though the servants who had drawn the water knew, the master of the feast called the bridegroom and said to him, everyone serves the good wine first. And when people have drunk freely, then the poor wine. But you have kept the good wine until now. This is the first of his signs Jesus did in Cana in Galilee, and manifested his glory. And his disciples believed in him. There's a few things that I want us to notice inside of this. But the big thing is what does it take for God to move in that type of way? If we have a God who is able to transform water into wine, then I think we have to begin to understand that he can transform our lives and our circumstances. If he's able to do that, then this is possible as well. And I know that most of us in here don't need too much of a transformation. But I'm willing to bet that there's some place in our life, there's something that we're all holding on to, that there's something that we have that we're just begging for a transformation in. And the news is it's not in a try harder, it's not in a do more, it's in a simply allowing Jesus to be Jesus.
Now, I don't know what it's like to run out of wine in a wedding. I didn't even know that was a big deal. But evidently, in the first century, it was. And Mary comes running to Jesus and she says, they have no wine. Now, this isn't a statement just because Mary thinks, hey, my glass is empty. But in the fact that something desperately wrong is going to happen here. There's no wine. This was the I'm out of gas situation. The car's not starting. And we're in bad shape. This is I have no more energy to get up in the middle of the night. I have no more energy to get up in the morning to go to work. I have no more energy. I have no more money to pay the bill that's coming in. This is that desperation right there. That if this doesn't get fixed, if this does not change, if my situation is not changed right now, something bad can happen. Evidently, it was such a big deal that if you read the King James Version of this passage, the master of the wedding is called a governor. That seems like a pretty big deal. I didn't have a governor at my wedding. I had bear heads on the wall. Right? And some barbecue. But evidently this was a big deal. No wine meant that you weren't providing for your guests. No wine meant that you were probably going to be mocked and ridiculed. No wine meant that your standing in the community no longer was there. No wine meant that you didn't care about other people. No wine would change your status if it was a good one into a bad one. And if you were hoping that your marriage was going to elevate you, this definitely wasn't going to happen. And so Mary does the one thing that she knows to do. She screams out, they have no more wine. But it's not just about the knowledge that they have no more wine. It's who she goes to. Because to this point, as far as everyone else was concerned, Jesus wasn't Jesus yet. He was Mary's kid. He was Joseph's son. He was son of the carpenter. I don't know if he had done anything else. But John says this is his first time. This is the first public thing that Jesus does that says, yoo-hoo, I'm God. Right? But Mary knows to go to him. She didn't go to the guy who owned the party store down the street. She didn't go to somebody else. She went to Jesus. You got to think this was a desperate time that called for desperate measures. And Jesus looks at her and gives that response. Woman, don't you know it's not my time yet? Why are you coming to me with this? What do you expect me to do? And I think far too often that's what I think Jesus is going to respond to me with. I think my problem or my issue or the transformation that has to happen in my life is so small that God's not going to care about that. So I just don't go to him. I don't go to Jesus because, well, he's not going to care. He'll look at me, and if he could call his mom woman, what's he going to call me? So I don't go. I might profess that God has the power to transform all kinds of things, but I don't act like it. I don't know if our actions really reveal the way that we think. I don't know if we really understand that God cares about each and every moment of our life. There's a key here. You see, Mary goes to Jesus because she knew him. And I think if we want to see Jesus make a transformation in our lives, we have to know him. I know, it's easy because moms should know their children. They know what they're capable of. They know what they're going to do. But I wonder, maybe that's a type of relationship that Jesus wants to have with you as well. One where you know him and he knows you. Which, newsflash, I don't know if you know this yet or not, but Jesus knows you. We're told that God knows every hair on your head. If you think that you are hiding anything from him, you're mistaken. One of the first things we need to know, first things we need to do, if we want to see a transformation in our life, is to know who Jesus is. Now, this coming into this room, into this gathering on a Sunday morning, may be one step of knowing who Jesus is, but I'm going to tell you that it's not good enough. It's not enough just to come in here and think, oh, I got an interaction. I had some cool songs that told me about Jesus turning water into wine. Some guy handed us some crackers and some juice, and everything was good. And
a guy with a cool beard said some words that I don't really remember, but that's good enough. I'm going to tell you right now, if you think that's knowing Jesus, we're a long ways away. And we've got a lot of steps to take. You see, knowing Jesus is having that relationship with him. How do we have a relationship with somebody who we do not see? Well, I think we read his words. We gather around his people. And while this is a good first step, there's another step for us to take. It involves having a communication with him. It involves us saying things to him that might get a response. Like, woman, why are you concerning me with this? Man, do you think I have time for that? Because we might be surprised at what he does next. You notice, Jesus says, it's not yet my time, but do you know what happens next? Mary knows Jesus. And so evidently she knows that even when he talks back to her that way, he still will do what she has told him to do. Which, by the way, not very much different than my mom. Right? She yells at me to do something, I tell her no. She starts to reach down for that shoe, and guess what? I did whatever she told me to do. Still happens today. And sometimes we may say, that's not supposed to happen, or that's not going to happen. But Mary knew Jesus. She knew him not only as her son, but she knew him as God, as creator of the world, as the one who spoke this world into existence. And because she knew who he was, she knew that he wasn't going to let it go down like this. And so she looks at the servants, and I love the instructions that she gives to them. Do whatever he says. Do whatever he says. And his instructions aren't hard. Right? Go fill up those basins with water. Now, I'm going to be honest with you. I always thought that this is what that would look like. Right? Why? Because this is what this is a water jug from my house. Right? Here's 3 of them because we're out of water at my house. And I've got like this much left in the one that's still on the water cooler, so there's no reason for me to get there. There's also a reason why I have like 10 of these things. Because same thing with the gas, right? So, this is what I thought of. Man, it's not very hard to go fill 6 of these up. I know, I just told you. It's very, very hard. It's just as hard as filling up your gas tank in your car. Right? You have to go to the place, you have to put it in there, you put some quarters in, it pops out the water, and then you take it home. Good to go. Jesus, no problem. It'll cost me about $1.50 and I'll have all of these things filled up. We're good to go. Party can continue. But this is not what Jesus asked them to do. And not in the same way. Because here's the truth. I didn't want to drive all the way to the water store. I'd go to my sink and turn it on and water would flow into it. And go outside, I'd get my garden hose. And I pretend like I was a kid again. Remember when you were a kid and you wanted water? It didn't matter where you were at. You just ran up to the house and drank right out of the hose. Did anybody else do that, or is that just me? Right? On your bike, you always had water. It was everybody's house. That wasn't it either. It wasn't this size. In fact, if we were to look at the water basin, I was trying to figure out what would be something that would help me understand how much water each one of those basins were. This is about the size. Now, here's the deal. I know that I look really strong because I can hold up 2 of these at one time. But if I was to fill up 2 of these, this is all I'm carrying. They're heavy. I don't even know how much fits in here. This is like 3 gallons or 5 gallons or something. This is about 20 gallons. Jesus says to those who were filling these things that were 20 to 30 gallon pots, that this was the smallest it was. It may have been a little bit bigger. He says, go fill them up. Now, they weren't going to pull the hose over and put it in there. They weren't going to wheel it out with these wheels and put it into their van and go to the water store and have them fill it up. They weren't going to have these nice things that they were able to carry. No, they probably had to get something smaller like this. Maybe go to a well and fill it up and walk it over. Dump it in. And they'd have to walk back, fill it up, and dump it in. And because I drive my car until it is completely out of gas, I understand where I would stop. About here.
What do I need to get to pass? What do I need to get to drive a little bit further? Here? That's good enough. Jesus, go ahead. Mary knew who Jesus was, and she said, go do whatever he says. And because Mary knew who he was, she knew what to ask him. She said, we need help. We need help. I think sometimes we don't ask Jesus for help, though, because we're afraid of what he's going to ask us to do. We're afraid that he's going to ask us to fill this whole thing up with water. And not just one of them, but here's 6 of them. Fill them all up. Not 6 of these. 6 of these. And while they're very, very light, when there's nothing in them, they get very, very heavy, very, very quick when you start putting water into it. I don't know if I'm ready to throw that all in there, Jesus. You're asking me to throw everything in there. You're asking me to fill that up. It's going to take a lot of work. I'm going to have to walk back and forth. I'm going to have to carry those things. I'm going to have to dump it in here. So we don't ask for help because we don't know what he's going to ask us to do. You know, there was a man in the Old Testament who had leprosy, and Jesus says, here's what you are. God says, here's what you're going to do to get healed. You're going to go in the water, you're going to dip down 7 times. You're not going to dip 1 time. You're not going to dip 2 times. You're not going to dip 3 times. You're not going to dip 4 times. You're not going to dip 5 times. You're not going to dip 6 times. You're going to dip down there 7 times. And here's the deal, is that the first 6 times, nothing happened. And sometimes I don't see a transformation because I don't really listen to Jesus, but I don't ask him because I think he's going to ask me to do something foolish, as Steve said, like dip in the water 7 times. You know, the nation of Israel came up to a city called Jericho. God looks at them and says, here, I'm going to give you the city over to you, but here's what you got to do. You got to make the walls fall down. Okay, no problem. We'll go get the cannons. He goes, nope. Get your band, march around it for 7 days. And sometimes I don't ask Jesus for help because I'm afraid of what he's going to ask me to do. You want me to get a trumpet and walk around walls, and that's going to make them fall down. Day 1, nothing happens. Day 2, nothing happens. Day 3, nothing happens. Day 4, nothing happens. Day 5, nothing happens. Day 6, nothing happens. I wonder how many days would it take before I just said, I quit. Jesus isn't going to work. And I wonder how many of us are sitting in here today with something that needs to be transformed, but we have quit because when we asked for help the last time, it didn't come. Now, I don't know. Maybe God was telling me as I prayed over the van that I was supposed to walk around it and jumping jacks and do some flips over the top of it that I just wasn't willing to do. Or he was just teaching me a lesson. You see, this isn't always is going to help, but how many of us just don't even go to God to ask him for help? You can transform water into wine, Jesus, but I don't think you can take what I have. I hurt too much. I depend on that too much. I need that too much. I think there's some things we can learn here. One is that we need to know who Jesus is. And who Jesus is somebody who cares for you very, very deeply. Even in the everyday normalcy of life. Number 2 is that we have to know that we have to ask him. And number 3, when we ask Jesus and he gives us instructions and he says, fill up the bucket, we have to put it all in there. He didn't say, bring me 1. He didn't say, bring me 2. He says, bring them all. I'm not going to move until you fill up every one of those jugs and you fill them up all the way to the top. Because I'm convinced that if they would have brought a thimble of water, Jesus could have done something. I think the creator of the world who could have snapped his fingers and those things would have been filled up. But if he would have done that, I wonder, the next time, if we would have run out of wine again, if there would have been a transformation at all, if we would have understood that Jesus doesn't just want your moment to be changed, he wants your life to be changed. And in order for him to change your life, to transform my life, to transform my situation, we have to put it all into the bucket. Fill it all. How much water do you want? All of it.
How much of my money do you want? All of it. How much of my life do you want? All of it. How much of my marriage do you want? All of it. How much of my parenthood do you want? All of it. How much of my job do you want? All of it. How much of everything do you want? I want all of it. God is saying he wants all of you. He doesn't want a part of you. And you're asking him to do a transformation in something that he has no business in. He wants all of you, your thought, your mind, your heart, your soul, your body, everything. He wants it all. I'm asking God for a transformation, but I'm not willing to give him everything. So Mary says to the servants, do what he says. And I guess the lesson for you and I today, if we want to see Jesus transform our lives, we need to fill the bucket. We need to do what he says. Well, preacher, I don't know what he wants me to do. Okay. Maybe the first thing he wants you to do is get to know him. Maybe, just maybe this week. And listen, here's the other cool thing, is that I don't think they filled all of that bucket up at one time. I told you, they probably went and brought a little bit at a time. Brought a little bit at a time. It's that march back and forth that began that transformation. Because you see, Jesus wasn't just transforming the water, he was transforming those people. And each little bit brought them one step closer to that final place. Maybe you're not ready to give Jesus all your money today. Maybe you're not even ready to get to 10%. About $1. Well, next week you can work your way up to $1.25. Until you get to that point where you're saying everything that I have is yours. Maybe you're not ready to fully submit to your spouse yet. But maybe you'd be willing to say, I will pray over them tomorrow morning.
Yeah, I'm still not going to do the dishes. Still not going to do the laundry. I'm still not going to say I love you in front of everybody else. But before I go to work, I'm going to wrap my arms around you and pray over you. Tomorrow I'll put more in. Maybe you're not completely ready to submit to your parents. But maybe you'll take the trash out. And then tomorrow, you can take the trash out and vacuum. And then the day after that, I'm going to just list off a whole bunch of chores that need to get done in my house. Maybe you're not ready to preach a sermon. Maybe you're not ready to give up your vice. Maybe you're not ready to give it all to him yet, but he's willing to work you through the steps. There are 7 days, 7 dips, 6 jugs. All of us have another step to take. Want to see transformation? Fill the bucket. First thing God wants is your heart. And our giving our heart to him is done in a thing called baptism. That is what we believe here at Christian Church. We think that's what the scripture says, that God says you cannot have eternal life. You cannot experience transformation until you're born again. That happens, Paul tells us in the book of Romans, that happens in baptism. It's when we experience a death, burial, and resurrection with him. And so there's some of us in here today who may need to take that step. That's the first step. Yeah, I don't know Jesus completely. I haven't read all his word, but I know this. I want to have a relationship with a guy who can transform water into wine and maybe has a desire to transform my life as well. Maybe your first step is baptism. I want to tell you right now, behind that screen, there is a baptistry. And we haven't always done this, but we have recently. That thing is going to be warm every Sunday morning. And so if you're sitting here today and you're wondering, I really want to get baptized today, but I don't know if that baptistry is going to be warm. It is. It's ready. Maybe that's your first gallon that you're dumping in the water. There's some of you who need maybe you just need to walk across the room as we sing this song and talk to somebody else. That's your first step. Maybe your first step is that when you leave from here today, you need to say yes to a job opportunity or no to another one. Maybe when you leave here today, you need to get in the car and tell your wife or your husband, hey, we need to go have coffee because we haven't talked for a while.
Maybe you have to do what I asked in the morning and just say, we're going to pray for each other every morning. Make that your step. Maybe if I'm going to give more, I'm going to pray more, I'm going to be a part of a group, I'm going to lead a group, I'm going to be whatever it is. Too lonely, give your life to Jesus. Too scared, give your life to Jesus. I don't know how it's going to turn out. But I know the only way we're going to see the transformation is if we give it all to Him. So today I throw my stuff in the bucket. And I'm asking you to throw yours in there too. Because the only way we change